All right, we're really excited. Next week, we debut season 2 of Never Did It Animation Boogaloo. And in honor of that, we're going to stitch together a few of the animated films we've already talked about on Never Did It to get you ready for our full 9-episode miniseries on animation. Jake, which movies should I throw in here?
The animated movies we covered on season 1 is we did have a couple Disney movies from the 40s. We did Saludos Amigos and Ichabod and Mr. Toad. We also did Flea, which is not a great episode because I didn't rewatch it and I suck on it. But then we also did Grave of the Fireflies, The House, Only Yesterday, where we had Mike come on, Son of the White Mare, and Girl Who Leapt Through Time.
Here is a preview for season 2, which debuts next week, a collection of our discussions about animation in season 1, not including Flea, because Jake doesn't like how he sounds in that episode. The first movie we're talking about is a curious little Netflix animated film called The House. Now, I assigned this to Jake because I saw this pop up on Netflix in early 2022, I want to say, and just thought it was the weirdest thing. I was just so enamored with it. I was like, what is this thing? And it's 3 different shorts. They're each about 20 and 30 minutes about the goings on in the same house over different generations, probably pretty far apart in time because it's different species occupying the house in these different generations. And each one was directed by a different stop motion animation director. And they're all pretty gothic and dark, but one of them is not as depressing as the other two. So there's that.
To sequence them correctly, I think, is one of the strengths of the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have, when thinking about the sequence of shorts in an anthology film, I go back to the Ballad of Buster Scruggs a lot because I often feel that the Liam Neeson short, which is the hardest to watch of all of them, is a little too close to the end for my liking. Like it's really with you when the movie's over. Yeah. And then the last short also pretty sad. So you're left feeling kind of glum, which is too bad because a lot of those shorts are happy. And now that's what the Coens wanted you to feel when you left Ballad of Buster Scruggs, but it's not how I love to feel when a movie starts off pretty funny, as the Ballad of Buster Scruggs does. All of the shorts in the house are not too dissimilar in tone, but the third one's just got a little bit more hopeful. Mm-hmm. First short is about family that is sort of, I don't want to say, they're kind of tricked into buying the house, and the house sort of overtakes them. Second one's about a realtor trying to sell the house sort of overtakes him. And the third one is post-apocalyptic. The world is flooded, and it's about a person who's trying to keep the house going, and her tenants are just not making that easy for her. Mm-hmm. What did you think of the house?
I liked it more than I expected too, and it's one that I think I liked it more after it was over than I realized I liked as it was going on. I don't know if that makes sense. Where
it absolutely does,
because I was watching them and I liked all 3 of them a great deal. But as it was over and I thought of them as a whole piece, I thought it was pretty strong. I liked probably the second one the best, with the realtor trying to sell the house, and with the weird couple that just kind of like moves in on him, and then like the whole family starts moving in. I thought that was just kind of like maybe the weirdest. I don't know. It's just
absolutely the weirdest.
It's just super unnerving, kind of the way they're just so calm and rational about everything, while the realtor is just kind of slowly losing his mind, basically. I mean, and the ending is definitely the darkest, I think, of the 3. Oh, I don't know. Actually,
well, the ending of the first one is pretty dark.
The first one's pretty rough too, actually. But it's there's a lot going on. I think all 3 of these are very good. I think they all stand on their own very well, and I think collected in a 3, it's a strong collection.
The first 2 are sort of gothic horrors. The first one kind of reminded me of Mother, Darren Aronofsky's Mother, in the way that the house sort of attacks and absorbs the family. And the second one reminded me a lot of more like a Yorgos Lanthimos Killing of a Sacred Deer kind of thing, where unnerving, like the main character thinks, or even like Yorgos Lanthimos's his short film Mimic, I think it's called, where the main character thinks one thing is going on, and it's very clear that the other folks that are antagonizing him have a way better handle on what's going on than he does.
I thought of Sorry to Bother You was another thing where
that's interesting
that I thought of during that second one. Yeah.
And then the third one is sort of sweet. It's not a horror, the third one. And I really like that so stop motion animation for a lot of people probably feels like a style in and of itself. the way that I hear people talking about animation a lot is they talk about it as if it's a genre, but it's not a genre. It's a medium. And I think I've said that on this podcast before. There's a lot of genres within animation, and there's even a lot of genres within stop motion animation. Like, I know I haven't seen it, but I know you've seen Mad God.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then there's another Junkhead, which is, I think, Japanese. Yeah, it is Japanese. And it's just like really trippy, kind of ugly, grimy stop motion animation like Mad God. I think Mad God's probably a little bit more like snotty, greasy, gross than Junkhead. Junkhead's a little more industrial, like a Tool video kind of. And then you have stuff like on the complete other end of the spectrum, like Nightmare Before Christmas, which is beautiful. And I think that's what a lot of people associate with stop motion animation. This is not like any of that. And this isn't even like each other. So the first short, and I don't remember what these shorts are called. They all have sort of like weird ethereal names.
They're like long. They're long too. They're like really long titles, I feel like.
But the first one's directed by Emma de Swaif and Mark James Rolls. They're Belgian. If you check out their stop motion animated shorts, these are this is very much of a piece with everything else they've done. And the other two directors who direct the other two shorts, Paloma Beza and Nikki Lindroth von Bar, who are Swedish and British, they're also doing things that just like look very different. The second one, third ones like kind of look alike, but different enough. Yeah, I'm really glad you watched it. I'm really glad you liked it too, because sometimes when I recommend my weirdo stuff to you, you don't like it. So I'm glad this fell more in line with Mind Game and less with like Tux and Fanny, which I know you weren't as big of a fan of.
I had a harder time with Tux and Fanny, but yeah, Mind Game I thought was cool, and The House, yeah, I definitely thought this was cool. A little bit, reminded me a little bit of like Wendell and Wild too. That was another kind of recent stop motion animation.
So Wendell and Wild, directed by the guy who directed Nightmare Before Christmas and James and the Giant Peach, like he is the sort of godfather of, it's like the godfather of like modern stop motion animation. Although Wendell and Wild was his first movie in a very long time. I didn't love Wendell and Wild, but I loved how it looked.
Yeah, it looks great.
Grave of the Fireflies is a Studio Ghibli production, and it is unlike any other Studio Ghibli production you'll see. For one thing, it's directed by Isao Takahata, who is very definitely not Hayao Miyazaki. I actually really love Isao Takahata's films. We'll have another one on the list for another year.
Is that Only Yesterday?
Yeah, Only Yesterday.
Good.
Grave of the Fireflies is a cartoon. That is pretty much the only thing it has in common with Miyazaki's films. The animation style is similar because it's in the same animation house, and they were partners for decades, even though they kind of famously didn't always get along. This movie's rough. This movie is about two kids, and when I mean kids, when I say kids, I mean kids, like a young child and her teenage brother, who are starving to death in Japan during World War II.
They'd be like 13 and 6, maybe.
Very young. They are homeless and impoverished as the Imperial Army is losing during World War II. And they keep waiting. First, they have to deal with the death of their mother in a bombing raid, and then they deal with the fact that their father has probably been killed in a naval battle.
And they don't know. Like there's no way to find out. Yeah.
Right. And the whole movie, they're just hoping that their father's going to come back for them, and things just get like darker and darker for them. And I will say this: it's an animated film. I've seen people say you should watch this with your kids. I think you could watch it with your teenage kids.
Yeah.
But if you have young kids, I would say definitely do not watch this with them. This movie is bleak, but it is also beautiful, and it is a real look at what. Look, it's really humanizing. The Imperial Japanese Army was, a part of the Axis powers during World War II. But those were people too, and this is a story that's not just about Hiroshima or Nagasaki. It's about the general toll that the war took on the people of Japan and the children of Japan. And I don't know. I would say it's required viewing for anyone really if you care about victims of war. What do you think of it?
Agree 100% with all that. I don't know why I've never seen it. It's kind of one of those ones that I was. When people would ask me like, oh, what's a movie you haven't seen that you should have seen? I wouldn't even say Grave of the Fireflies because I'd be ashamed to admit that I hadn't seen it. Because I found out, like, I've started watching Miyazaki movies, like when Princess Mononoke came out. That was the first one that kind of hit my radar. And, obviously Grave of the Fireflies was well established by that point. So I don't know why it slipped past me, but it did. And it is really a beautiful movie between the brother and the sister. And there's a ton of war movies out there, and there's a ton of World War II movies out there, but there are very few war movies that ever actually show children or, have them as the main characters. I mean, there's other adult characters in the story, but they all come and go, and it's really just about those two kids, and that's just not something you frequently see in a majority of the war movies that come out, regardless of what country they come from.
I think maybe one of the reasons this slips by people, even people who are big Studio Ghibli fans, is it's not included in Studio Ghibli collections.
Right.
For example, Grave of the Fireflies is not on HBO Max. I had to watch this on Hulu. I couldn't find this on HBO Max.
Oh, really? I had owned it. I bought it on Voodoo. It was like in a $5 sale one time. I was like, there will come a day where I watch this, and it came. So.
Got it. Well, so that's interesting. Yeah, when I watched this for my movie a day bit last year. Oh, no, you know what? I didn't watch it for that. I watched it because I wanted to watch every Studio Ghibli movie.
Oh, right. I wanted to join you in that, and then I just didn't.
Well, you kind of are now, because I'm going to make you watch Only Yesterday also.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so, it doesn't appear. One, I think because it's not a Miyazaki movie, and I think that the Takahata movies aren't as well known. And there are plenty of Miyazaki movies that aren't as well known too. He was so prolific, but Takahata movies just aren't as well known. Like, how many people know The Tale of Princess Kaguya? How many people know Only Yesterday? Or how many people even know like My Neighbors the Yamadas, which I actually don't like. But
yeah, I like The Tale of the Princess Kaguya or whatever. That was up for best animated film, actually, and I remember really liking that one.
Yeah, it's a cool one. I watched that the day after I got my COVID vaccine, so I was not feeling great. But this one, yeah, that's such a good point about children not being the focus of war movies. I mean, I guess you have like The Boy in the Striped Pajamas, but apparently that I haven't seen it, and I've heard it's not very good.
Yeah, I've heard some bad things about that, and of course Schindler's List, has the famous scene with the girl and the red.
It's one scene.
They're a lot of times they're like auxiliary characters who like even in the old like the old Western type, even in the old like Civil War type movies, like, okay, the dad's leaving to go off to war, like, all right, Sonny, you watch over the farm now, okay, Pa,
right,
and that's really all he does, so they're just not really the focus of that, and even when kids are the focus of a lot of movies, they're not, like I said, so bleak and so like just heartbreaking when they can't get anyone to get, there's no food for them, they can't even eat, how is this 13-year-old supposed to take care of his 6-year-old sister? He doesn't have any experience doing that, and he's not getting any help. It's just it's just devastating to watch, and it doesn't really end on a high note either. It just kind of like, hey, this all happened and it sucks.
Right. Spoiler for a 30-year-old movie, but I guess also like trigger warning, like these children die. I don't know if you need to know that going in. I did look up the ending to this movie about halfway through because I just like needed to steel myself for it, and then it was worth it. It was like, even knowing that happens, it's very much worth it to watch this movie.
Very much the right ending for that story, and it seems weird. Kind of a weird thing to say, like, oh yeah, I'm happy that the kids died at the end of the movie.
Yeah, we're not happy, but it just feels right.
It feels true to the story, and it feels, like they were getting the feeling that they wanted to get from it.
It's not even a spoiler. The boy dies in the first scene of the movie, right? And then it circles back around. So it's funny, you're talking about the Westerns with kids, and I was thinking, maybe the reason there aren't so many, not even just war movies about kids, but movies about kids, is because the ones that do feature kids are bad. Or at least the kids are bad. Like, I think we have Shane on the list for you.
Okay.
That movie is largely starring a child who is not the best child actor. Or I was thinking about, now I can't even think of it. The only like even similar comp I can think of is Jojo Rabbit, and that movie's great.
Yeah, that movie's excellent. Yep.
Yeah, or I guess like Little Manhattan, but that's a happy movie.
Yeah,
it's a cutie. Anything else you want to say about Grave of the Fireflies?
I mean, that this is one that's its reputation is really deserved. You hear a lot about it in certain circles and amongst those Ghibli movies. I mean, the Miyazaki ones, like I said, are more famous, but this one is as good, if not, better than, really any of them. And it's, we've said it before, but required essential viewing, preferably before you turn 40, like me. Don't wait that long. There's no reason to wait. I mean, it's a tough hang, but it's definitely one worth doing for sure.
Agreed. When I knew we wanted to have Mike on, I offered him years where we were doing animated movies. Now, all of I think, except for one, Jake, you gave me The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, but with the exception of that, and maybe one other old Disney movie, I'm the one recommending all these animated movies because I'm obsessed with animated films. And one you hadn't seen, one of the few Ghibli movies you hadn't seen, was this. It was only yesterday. And Mike, with your background in animation, that being such a big part of your actual career, we wanted to have you on to talk about an animated movie. So Only Yesterday was directed by Isao Takahata, the unsung hero of Studio Ghibli. A lot of people just associate Studio Ghibli with Hayao Miyazaki, with good reason. His movies are way more known, I think, both in Japan and in the United States, but especially here. But Isao Takahata is responsible for some of the best movies, I'm going to say flat out, of the last 50 years, including one we've covered on this podcast before, Grave of the Fireflies, which could not be one more depressing or more different than Only Yesterday. The only thing these two movies have in common is that they're both really grounded in reality. And that's one of the things that I think is so cool about Takahata's movies. His other movies that people might know are My Neighbors the Yamadas, which is based on a comic strip, but also, even though it's the characters are more stylized and it's more episodic, it's very much just about a family. And he did The Tale of Princess Kaguya, which does have some fantastical elements to it, but also is largely about real people. I mean, not real people, but regular people who happen to be experiencing something otherworldly in their world. It's not like Spirited Away or Howl's Moving Castle, where the whole world becomes heightened. And I'm not disparaging those movies at all. I love those movies. But anyway, so that's why I recommended Only Yesterday. Let's start with Jake. What did you think of Only Yesterday?
I loved this movie, loved it a lot, and I'm so glad you recommended it. I don't know why I had never seen it, because I remember when it came out, it finally came to the US. It came out on like DVD in like 2016. It took a long time for this movie to come here for whatever reason, and I remember buying the DVD or the Blu-ray when it came out or whatever, and then for whatever reason I never got around to watching it. I don't know why, and then I was poor for a while and ended up having to sell most of my Blu-rays, and then I still never got around to watching it. And so I'm really, really glad that I finally did. It's really a beautiful movie. It's very simple. It's just a wonderful story. The long story is that, yeah, I loved it, and I'm really glad that I finally have seen it.
I forgot to say what it's about. It's about a young lady who has not a high pressure job, but a professional job in Tokyo. So she decides to go on a little vacation to a rural village that she went to when she was younger to spend time with I believe it's her brother-in-law's family. While she's there, she keeps remembering things that happened to her when she was in 5th grade. And so it's really a dual story of what she's going through as an adult and how it was informed by things she experienced in 5th grade. And the cover art is her as an adult and her as a 10-year-old. So yeah, that's the deal. Mike, what did you think of it?
I'm so glad that you recommended this movie. I thoroughly enjoyed it. After about the first 20 minutes, where I had to break my American brain and like try and get to the pacing of this film, which was like, because I was like, okay, because you guys maybe do the same thing too, but I'm like watching a movie, I start to try and break down the structure. Like I'm looking at like, okay, this is what's going to happen. Here's a protagonist. But it's none of that. It's just like, it's a very simple story with very simple, like deliberate pacing that is stunningly beautiful. I told Brad I could watch this movie. I would gladly watch this movie for 90 minutes or however long it was with no sound on. I just watched it because the visual storytelling, the two different styles of the flashbacks versus the present, it was just like stunning. The Studio Ghibli, just the environments they create are just so enriching and just so engulfing. Like I watched it. I've actually watched it twice now. I watched it on a plane and I watched it on a regular screen. I like on the plane, I was like, oh my, I said, oh my, probably like 4 times. And I was like, oh my, like just watching the visual and the way that they were able to, again, break up the different styles where it's like more abstract, which she's remembering, versus more detailed, more like the traditional anime style when it's in present day. And being able to visually break up those two distinct things, like you really felt like it was a memory, just in the style, I thought was incredible. Like anytime you get me, whenever you're like, because I'm a visual artist again, and somebody who worked on animated films for like 15 years, how much work you pour into the visual look of it, and to have that be such a strong part of the story is killer. It was awesome. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie enough to watch it. I would have watched it twice, naturally.
So I don't think the Studio Ghibli team is that big, but from what you know, would those two styles be handled by 2 different teams, or is it the same group doing everything?
So there's an art director with a vision for that. And then there's probably two teams who execute it. That's kind of the way that you do it anyway. Like and again, this is 20 years before I was working. I was, 10 years old when this movie came out, but generally speaking, you have leads who are in charge of specific looks or specific environments or specific areas of the scene of the film, especially because they'll have environment art. Like clearly in this style, there's environment artists and character artists. So when they're the environment artists and the style, like they generally focus like one style in one location or one type of thing. So my guess is that one central visionary had this idea, and then two teams executed the specifics of the looks.
They did an amazing job. That was, I think, the first thing I noticed was when she gets to the farm in the modern day timeline, everything is drawn so sharply. The outlines of all the crops and the people, they don't move a lot, and they're very distinctly drawn. The foreground, the middle ground, the background, they're all very separated in the same way that you would see some, like your visual spectrum would see them. And then in the younger timeline, it's all foreground. Everything is just like what she remembers is super vivid, and anything else is very faded. The corners of the frames are gone. They're almost pure white in a lot of the shots. And one of my, I'd say, 3 favorite shots of the movie is when she first talks to the boy who has a crush on her after this baseball game that they watch. He tells her that, they find out they both like cloudy days, and they realize they have things in common, and they're nice to each other, which is a nice moment for them because all of their friends are making fun of the fact that they might have crushes on each other. And she feels so good that when she runs away from the exchange, she flies into the air. It looks like an old cell animation of like the cell of the character was just lifted off of the background. And she flies into the air, and she flies through the clouds, and then she lands in her bed. And then my favorite thing about it is it then transitions into her as an adult woman, and she herself, thinking of the memory, can't contain herself and like squirms in her bed. But the bed itself is like very well defined, and her character model is very well defined, but she's flopping all over the place, and you get that feeling. Like it helps you to feel that excitement that she felt. And I was like, oh my God, these people are masters. This is crazy that they were able to give us this visual of that feeling of childlike excitement as an adult through a memory in such a vivid way.
These are 2 funny movies to compare together, right? They're both movies made in 1991 who take flashbacks to the 60s, but they're so different in their handlings of it. Like Oliver Stone is like, I'm going to show you every conspiracy. Like I'm going to show you everything. They're going to say one thing and I'm going to show you what I want you to think. This is like just that, like that subtlety, that getting you to feel the same thing as the character through simple visuals, like the simple styling. It's so cool to see. This is like a master filmmaker at work. Like it really feels masterful in its approach and what it's able to deliver.
Yeah, it's definitely focused on making you feel things. I should mention too that I watched this with my 11-year-old daughter, which I feel like maybe this is why I didn't watch it when it came out, because I mean when it first came out and I bought the DVD, I mean she would have only been 4 or 5 years old, like, and I wouldn't have shown it to her then. I would not have held her attention then. So maybe that's why I didn't get around to watching it then, but I watched it with her now, and it was very much something that she was into and very much something that she responded to in ways, the 5th grade memory. She's in 6th grade right now, so a lot of this stuff felt like very familiar to her and very kind of universal to that experience of being 11, 12-year-old girl. But it was something that like, even I responded to, just the way that they filmed it. So I mean, you've got a girl of that age and then a 41-year-old male, and we're both like responding to these same things and having these emotional responses to it. There's not a lot of movies that can do that effectively for both of us. It's really very cool.
I have 2 questions about that experience. One is, how was she with the pacing of the movie?
She does very well. We've done a lot of movies like this. I've kind of built her up, we were like, we watch a lot of movies, and I'm always very open to kind of showing her everything. But now, like with this pacing, and I just kind of tell her, like, this is a Ghibli movie, like this is, and she understands what that means because she's seen quite a few of them now. Like, when she was younger, we watched some of the, you just kind of have to build it up in the right way. Like, you watch Totoro first, like, or you watch Kiki's Delivery Service first, and then you move into Spirited Away. And so, like, she's had the proper like build up to be able to, watch a movie that's paced very slowly like this and kind of understand like that's how it's going to move.
I guess the difference there is, I think that might be good for boys, but for girls, you might think like this is the same as showing someone like Mary Poppins first, but then the next thing you show them is like 7 Brides for 7 Brothers, because this doesn't really have anything like, what's the hook? Now, for a girl who's the same age as the girl in the flashbacks, that's the hook.
Yeah.
But for a 5, 6, 7-year-old child, I don't know that there's a lot here that's going to hold their attention, because so much of what's interesting about the movie, I mean, it's going to be different when you're a kid and when you're an adult. You can get different things out of it. But for us watching is the power of nostalgia and the importance of balancing what you remember of your childhood and what you wanted then for yourself as an adult with what you can actually come to expect, which is so cool.
I think some of the things, so I'm a step behind Jake. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. We've watched only Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service were at that level of like introduction of all this. The detail of the actions that they perform, like just slicing up the pineapple, would have been engaging. Like the detail of smashing up the flour into the powder to make the rouge, like all that stuff is very engaging to a kid. And the fact that they went to that level of detail on it, and the pacing actually doesn't, for my kids anyway, it doesn't really like throw them off. They're fine with the slower pacing. I think that it's just that the normal kid stuff, which is like blah blah blah, blah, like just visual
Diarrhea.
Yeah, exactly, is generally too much for them. So this level of pacing, because I think that my kids anyway like the moment to process it of seeing it, like letting things play out, because they like to explore the frame more than adults do. Like adults are like, okay, got it, check, move on, check, move on, check, and kids are like looking around the whole thing.
Huh. That's so interesting. That brings up you mentioned the pineapple thing. That brings up two thoughts for me. One is the Japanese do so much better at illustrating through animation. And you know what? Not just animation. They do it in live action movies too. The sumptuousness of food. Jake, I think we talked a little bit about the taste of things in our 2023 year-end podcast, but that was another movie. It's not Japanese, but that's another movie that does that very well. But Japanese movies do this all the time, and they do it a lot in anime. That was wonderful, but the slowness and deliberateness of certain shots really caught my attention. Like when Toshio is taking Taiko from the train station to the farm. That scene is like 10 minutes long of them sitting in the car talking to each other. And a few cool things happen. One, it's just cool that we spend that much time with them getting to know each other again. But the other thing that's cool, the car stops and then starts again. Like he actually puts the car in park or just breaks the car when they get to a red light, and then they talk and then they move on, and they take the time to animate him putting the car in a different gear. There's no reason for that to happen. We wouldn't think anything of it if the car was just in motion the entire time. Sometimes the car is in motion for more than 10 minutes. You're on a highway, but he didn't do that. And it let you feel like you were really in that car, and you heard the sound of the gears change, and you heard him like pause to Toshio would pause to think about what he wanted to say next. We just like got to sit in it. And you said, Mike, earlier, I would watch this for 90 minutes in silence. It's a 2-hour movie. It just feels like it's shorter because it is so expertly executed.
There's a lot of detail when you're making, I mean, that's the thing that you tell when I'm watching an animated film, right? You can see that craft, you can see those pauses. And a lot of that is because they probably set up a camera in a car and had two people talking and going through the pacing, and like, the animators will act out this stuff all the time and film themselves just to see those subtle things. And I'm sure they probably did an audio recording of them having a conversation in the car, and you could hear the gears shifting. And it was like, oh, we're in a car. Like there are things that you do it in real life, and then you're like, okay, these are the things that signal what we want to do, because sometimes it's like a pacing thing. Sometimes that shifting is a reason for the character to pause to think about what they're doing next, because that's naturally what we do. And I think a lot of that, again, is just that attention to detail. There's a confidence in filmmaking that way too. There's a confidence in like the audience will come with us on this. We've got it. Like we don't have to just like spew the words into their ears the whole time. We can pace this out.
I'm glad you mentioned the reference footage, because one of the cooler behind the scenes things I've seen recently, and it was for a movie I didn't actually like that much. It was for Strange World, the Disney movie. But one of the animators or one of the directors on the movie filmed himself climbing up a jungle gym so he could see what his body looks like and like where he felt unconfident in like moving up, so that Jake Gyllenhaal's character model could look the same climbing up a mountain. And I just love that they were able to do that. And it illustrates. Now, you mentioned this is in 1991. This was released in 1991, which means it was probably conceived in 1989 or earlier. They didn't have smartphones. And what Disney animators I know used to do, or probably all animators used to do, is have mirrors next to their desks so they could, look at their own expressions and see how their characters could be expressed. But if you don't have an easy camera, if you don't have a smartphone with you, how are you going to know, like, how often do I shift the gear? What does my arm look like when I'm doing that? You're not going to take a giant camera and put it in your car. So probably what had to happen was they did take like a big home camcorder where you put the actual VHS tape in the camcorder, slap it down, and had it in the back seat, and then they had to imagine what that would look like from the side.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Can I tell you a time in my career where that backfired? Can I do a little side range? So this was before I actually started working at Blue Skies. This is on Horton Hears a Who. And so Jim Carrey was the main voice, and the studio gave him some creative control over the final output to get him to voice act in the film. And he really wanted the end of Horton Hears a Who. For some reason, he got in his head that he wanted this REO Speedwagon song to finish out the movie. It made no sense. we were all like, this is bananas. This isn't how you should, I can't hide this feeling anymore. Should not be the last bit of Horton Hears a Who. So our animators, one of the guys who ended up directing Nimona, Nick Bruno, great guy, great director, and another one of our lead animators were like, okay, we'll play this out for him. We'll do this in the most ridiculous way. It'll be like a love song between Horton, the elephant, and the mayor of Whoville, a very smart, tiny guy. And we'll do it like they're singing to each other, and we'll mash it up. We'll make it so ridiculous that he will see how bad of an idea this is. And he loved it, and it is now the end of the movie. If you watch the end of Horton Hears a Who, it is madness. And it was because Jim Carrey had some sort of like, I don't know if it was like contractual or what, but had it in his contract that he had this creative control. He wanted this Aero Speedwagon. We came up with a really bad way of showing it, and then that's the end of the movie. So it's like if you're watching and because Horton Hears a Who is a good movie. It's really beautifully done. It's really nice. And then you get to the end, you're like, what is happening? And that's why it happened. It was because we had access to smartphones and we could play it out. And he's like, yes, this is what I want.
That's too bad. I've never seen any of those Dr. Seuss adaptations, animated adaptations. Maybe I need to dive into a few of those.
Yeah, Horton Hears a Who's it's a good one. Like it's the first minute of it was just, but again, biased because I know that people beautiful. Like it's a really beautiful opening to a film. Tough close, but big opening.
Yeah.
Jake, anything else on Only Yesterday?
Actually, we were talking about the driving, the scene where they were driving. It made me think of how you were talking about how they do similar things in live action movies. I literally thought of Drive My Car. That same scene in Drive My Car where they were, just in the car for like 10, 15 minutes, just talking to each other, and just, like how effective scenes like that can be. So that was just another thought I had. And I was wondering if maybe, that was, there was some influencer, if that's something, like maybe Japanese filmmakers, just have a thing with people getting to know each other driving in cars or something.
Well, two things. Ryusuke Hamaguchi is just like one of the best directors doing it right now. His movie Happy Hours, I can't remember whether it's plural or not. So that's a 4-hour film about ladies hanging out. So, he gives himself the space to be able to do things like that, to let people really live in those moments. In Happy Hour, he has I think it's a 30-minute scene of the 4 main women at an improvement seminar where they like learn how to be more in tune with themselves through breathing. And it's just like you're in the seminar with them. They just do the seminar. So he's able to do stuff like that. And then we saw, Perfect Days came out recently, and there's a lot of folks getting to know each other in cars or right by a van that has cleaning equipment in it.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because the main character doesn't talk very much in that movie. Yeah, I don't know if I do think maybe Japanese audiences in general or Japanese production companies have more faith in their audiences to do things like that. But we see it also in European films. We recently talked about Leviathan, a Russian film that had a decent amount of things like that. I mean, more so than most American movies that we see put out.
Certainly, yeah.
A couple quick things about this movie before we break by. 5th grade is really hard. Those kids were brutal on each other. It's just a reminder, if you have a child in the 5th grade, be kind to them. They're going through it.
Yeah, I had a hard time. There's some of this that I had a hard time with too, just knowing I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what my kid experiences, on a daily basis. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a lot of like very real, visceral things. I thought something that really interesting about this movie too was how she like fantasizes about going to the country when she's a kid. And then as an adult, she kind of like fabricates this, my brother-in-law's family, so I should go out there. Like, I love this idea of us having an idea in our head of an ideal when we're a kid. And that like seeping into adulthood too. I see people do that sometimes where they're obsessed with like, I just talked to a coworker who's French, and he was like, did you know that in France growing up, we watched a lot of Japanese anime because it was like free and the networks got it for free. So we were pumped with Japanese anime. So there's a lot of affinity for Japanese culture among French people who are now 40s.
I have to cut you off because the reverse is crazy. So in Japanese anime, there is a fetishization of France, particularly Paris, that is so intense that there is a phenomenon called Paris syndrome, where Japanese tourists go to Paris, see that it is just a regular city like any other city that has, litter and pickpockets and things like that, and they emotionally cannot handle it and they freak out. It's wild. This is real.
That's crazy. I mean, but this whole idea that she like made it in her head that she's a person who loves the country and loves farming and loves like without ever actually doing it, kind of fantasizing about it and then manifesting it into reality in adulthood as part of this way of dealing with her childhood, which I thought was very interesting. And I also learned about, I told Brett this, I learned about makeup. I didn't know that flower petals did that. That was a good bit of information. We did text back and forth. Oh, we didn't talk about this movie at all, which I was very grateful for. But you did mention something about like you talked about like the class struggle stuff, and I wanted to ask you about that.
She mentions it while she's talking about makeup, that the people who are responsible for this arduous process where 60 bags full of this petal make an ounce of this makeup will never ever actually get to be able to use that makeup. So I thought that that was an interesting shoehorn into the movie. And she also talks about the difference between Toshio's dream of being an organic farmer and what that all means, and how that's so much more serious and well thought out than her sort of flippant, I love the country, but I don't know what I want. And I have a great job, but I've never been married. You know, she has so much less of an idea of what she wants to do with her life. So it's the difference between the rural mindset and the urban mindset. What I really liked about what you said about how she idealized the countryside is, you know, the whole point of the movie is that she has brought her 5th grade self with her to the country. By the way, Daisy Ridley does an amazing job as the adult voice, and Dev Patel also an amazing job as Toshio.
For sure.
Agree.
He does everything well. And it's like it's like, this is the last place I expected to see his name, and crushed it. Of course he did.
Incredible.
Amazing.
Weird that he got to keep his British accent and Daisy Ridley didn't get to keep hers.
Yeah, what was the choice? What was behind that? Yeah.
No idea. So yeah, she brings along her fifth grade self. And at the end of the movie, after she has seen that one of the things about rural life that she's not ready for, which is time to get married, better get married right now, and that sort of chases her away from staying there, she resolves to not bring her 5th grade self with her when she goes back next time, which makes you wonder, will she go back next time? Will she go back at all, given that her 5th grade self is the reason she went out there in the first place?
I don't know. It's like, is the itch scratched, or is it?
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know.
And before we get to top 10, so there's one scene in Only Yesterday that I want to mention was my favorite scene. It's Toshio and Naiko, and it's when they're, you know, just kind of looking out over the nature scene or whatever, and it's when he's telling her, you know, all these city people come out to the country and they just think like, oh, it's so beautiful, look at the nature, and he's like, but no, this was all made by man. You know, like this stream was put together by man, this was put together by man. That's just something that, like, yeah, I'm a city person, I would probably have thought the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not something you didn't think about, and I just thought that was a really nice little scene that kind of stood out for me.
I like that scene a lot because he's telling her she's stupid and she just sort of has to eat it.
Yeah. Well, he's doing it in a very nice, polite way.
Yeah, but ultimately he's
British
being like,
accent. Yeah.
ultimately he's being like, he starts by saying, you're wrong. Yeah. Now, don't worry. Every city person's wrong, but also city people are stupid.
I also liked, there was a moment when she was a kid when they were talking about going to the country, and she used like a country voice. But it was like an American, like, oh, no, you don't want, like, it was like an American country bumpkin voice. And I was like, is there an equivalent in Japan? Like, she must have, otherwise they wouldn't have done that. And I was like, and I don't know Japanese or the dialects or what, but I was just like, I thought that was so funny that they translated that all the way down to like the traditional country bumpkin voice.
In at least one Kurosawa movie, there's a reference to, you don't sound like you're from here, you must be from here. That's like the whole premise of the pivotal scene in Inglourious Bastards, where he's from Piz Palu, and that's why he sounds so weird. But then his fingers give it away.